Hare Krishna. On the occasion of Christmas, let us have some Vaishnava meditations on this festival. Christmas is among the biggest religious festivals in the world because Christianity is, as of now, the biggest religion in the world. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his Chaitanya Shikshamrit, gives a beautiful meditation of how a devotee should see the forms of worship of other religions. So he says that if we go to the religious place where where the Lord is being worshipped in a way different from ours, then we should stay there in a reverential pose and meditate how the Lord is being worshipped over here. The Lord whom I worship, He is manifesting in a different way and He is being worshipped in a different way here. And if I can, by meditating and appreciating how He is mercifully manifesting over here, I'm paraphrasing Bhaktivinoda Thakur's statement now here. So then what, by appreciating how mercifully manifests in different ways to attract different people's heart, my attraction to the Lord in my worshipably attractive form, that increases. That means when we see the mercy of God manifesting at Christmas through the appearance of Jesus, now our attraction to Krishna can increase. Let us see how that can happen. One of the defining characteristics of the Vedic tradition is its broad scope of mercy. So Krishna says that Sambhavami yuge yuge yada yada hi dharmasya glanirabhavati bharata abhyutthanamadharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. So in these two verses, very well quoted verse, frequently quoted verses in the Gita 4.7 and 8, Krishna talks about whenever there is decline of religious principles and rise of irreligion, then He descends. And significantly He says, Yuge Yuge, I come Yuga after Yuga, I come repeatedly. So this refers not only to Yuga avatars who come in every Yuga, but it refers to the multiplicity of avatars in general. So in the Gaudiya tradition, in our tradition, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was the first Acharya who commented on this verse and stated that this refers even to the manifestations of God or His servants outside the Vedic tradition. So he said that, and Prabhupada also reiterates this in his commentary, sometimes God comes Himself and sometimes God sends His Son or His messenger. This refers to Jesus and to Muhammad. So now, prior to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, there was no interaction of our tradition, not so much interaction with the other traditions, especially the Abrahamic religions like Christianity. So now the Krishna conscious tradition is spread all over the world, and as devotees we may not go to church to celebrate Christmas, but we can also have a right disposition and we can see Jesus, as Prabhupada said that he was a great Vaishnava. Jesus, when Prabhupada was asked about Jesus, so he said that, what is some Christian priest would ask him, what are your thoughts about Jesus? So he said, he's our Guru. Now they had come from a somewhat sectarian background where they would see all other religions as manifestations of false God. And here was a worshipper of a false God saying that he accepts their teacher as Jesus as Guru. So he said, how is that? So Prabhupada gave a non-sectarian criteria and he said that today that Jesus gave up His life for the service of God. And if somebody can do that, then that means that person has an enormous love for God. Who can sacrifice one's life without enormous love? That means we love a cause more than our life. He loved God more than his life, and that's why he sacrificed his life. And somebody who has that level of love for God is definitely a worthy spiritual master, a glorious spiritual master. So Prabhupada had a very respectful, reverential attitude towards Jesus Christ in that sense. So he is a great Vaishnava. Now we should not see the word Vaishnava in a sectarian sense as a worshipper of a Hindu god named Vishnu. Actually, if you look at the features of Vishnu, we don't get stuck with a particular name and religious identification that comes with it, but we focus on the features of Vishnu and how he is unlimited, how he is all powerful, how he exists beyond time and space, how he is omniscient. So these are actually characteristics of the same one God who is described in the Bible or even the Quran. So there is only one God, and when we say use the word Vaishnava, we use it not in a narrow sense of the worshipper of a Hindu God, but in the sense of a devotee of the one Lord, one God who is talked about in all religions. So Jesus is a great devotee, and just as we can pray for the mercy of great acharyas on their appearance day, similarly we can pray for the mercy of Jesus also, and we can not only pray for his mercy, but also we can look at his life from the perspective of Vaishnavism and learn valuable lessons. So there is at one level we see that Jesus, when he appeared, it was amidst adversity. He appeared when his parents, there was his virgin birth as the Catholic Church holds. So now when he appeared, actually he was in a place where there were no rooms available, and because there were no rooms available, actually he was born in a manger, in a shed for animals. So that great person who would deliver a great many people, he appeared in a place which was quite nondescript, undistinguished. So we can see the parallel here. Krishna appeared of all places in a prison. So now there are some competitive religionists, some Christians tried to prove that the Krishna story is actually an imaginary story that has been stolen from the Jesus narrative. And some Hindus try to prove that actually Jesus' story is an imaginary narrative that is stolen from the Krishna story, Krishna narrative. But actually, they are. It has now more or less been accepted even in academic circles that Krishna is a historical figure, and as is Jesus. The specific details of their life may not be accepted by academic scholars. They may be debated, but they have existed, and Krishna existed before Jesus. So rather than trying to see the similarities in the stories as occasions for trying a one-upsmanship, we can see a spiritual resonance that God himself or his son, God himself is a supreme millionaire and his son is also a prince, but both when they appear in obscure circumstances, in poverty-stricken circumstances. And the idea is that in this world there may be dark beginnings, but dark beginnings can well be the way to glorious future, very bright future, just as Krishna established dharma in the world, and so did Jesus. So the journey from darkness to light is what characterizes our material journey also, not just in terms of facing specific obstacles in life, but also tamasoma jyotirgama, to go from darkness from the dark material world to the light of the spiritual world. Now similarly, if we look at the principle that Jesus appeared in this world, so now he is considered to be in the Christian tradition an incarnation. So now the Christian conception of incarnation is significantly different from the Vaishnava understanding of God's incarnations. So Jesus did not claim to be God, he claimed to be the Son of God, although some Christians equate him with God because God as a person is practically not described at all in the Christian tradition, and that's why Jesus is sometimes made into a surrogate object of worship. But it's understood that Jesus came in a body of flesh. So that's why the word incarnation is appropriate for him. Karna is, as we know in carnivorous, flesh. So incarna means to come in flesh. So he came in a body that was made of flesh, but he was not contaminated by flesh. His body was pure. His heart was pure and his body was used for pure purposes. So, so now we're talking about going from darkness to light. The point is that the Lord or his representatives come from the light to the darkness, from spirit to matter, in order to rescue and take us back. Now when Krishna comes, he does not come in a body of flesh, he comes in a body of spirit itself. But when Krishna's devotees come, from a material perspective, if we see, their body may be made of material elements like ours. So the spiritual master's body is not material in the sense that it is used for spiritual purposes, but it is material in the sense that its constituents are material. So when we talk about Krishna's incarnations, they are of a categorically different nature than the incarnations of his representatives also. Krishna comes directly in Satchitananda body, whereas his devotees take a material form, but they do not take a material consciousness, as happens to conditioned souls. But the point is that they also appear in the darkness of this world to take us out of the darkness to the light. And further, if we see, now Jesus described that meant for many years of his life, almost till the age of 29-30, he lived for 33 years. So initially he exhibited some religious tendencies, and he was born in an obscure family that way, a carpenter's sort of family. And there when he lived, he occasionally exhibited some religious tendencies. And there are some years in his life which is missing, which some people say that he came to India and learned about spirituality over here. Now again, the point is that these sort of statements should not be used for religious one-upsmanship, that our religion is superior to your religion. Actually, we want to, all these representatives have come to take us back to God, and we all should inspire each other to move forward on our journey towards God. Prabhupada would say, we are not come here to convert Christians to Hindus or do any sort of horizontal conversion like this, from one religion to another. If there is any conversion, there should be vertical conversion. Vertical conversion is from being a materialist to being a spiritualist, from being a lover of matter to lover of God. And we can inspire each other and move forward on our journey. Srila Prabhupada would say that if a Christian also understands the principles of Krishna consciousness as given in the Bhagavad Gita and Vedic literature, that Christian can become a better Christian. So we can focus on the principle that actually Jesus' ministry was for not much more than 3 years. He emerged on the scene, and what happened? Essentially, there was strong ritualism. Birds were being killed in the name of rituals, and the essential spirit that Jesus had given, that Moses had given, and the subsequent prophets had given, of devotion to God, that had been lost under a garb of under the pressure of so many rituals. And Jesus overturned the rituals. He said, focus on the essence, focus on devotion. And just as there was a caste system in the Vedic tradition where people who were low down in the caste hierarchy were often looked down at, but so similarly Jesus also mixed with people who were low class, people who were lepers, who were looked down on. He embraced them, he healed them. Similarly, people who was a prostitute, he actually transformed her, Mary Magdalene. So the point was, there are rituals which are meant to link us with God. So even the stratification of society is meant to create a pathway for people to go towards God. But that which is meant to be a road towards God can become a roadblock when it is rigidly insisted on without understanding its purpose. So now we see similar thing in the Govardhan Leela. The Brajavasis were doing rituals, but Krishna said, stop the rituals and worship Govardhan, who is a manifestation of Krishna. So time and time again, when the Lord or his representatives come, the channel of grace that has been coming since time immemorial, that gets clogged and blocked because of contaminations, and the Lord messengers come to remove those blockages so that the channel of grace can flow down to humanity and lift humanity up towards God again. So Jesus said that I have not come to teach you anything new. I have come to tell you, I have come to confirm the commandments that were given. So Moses had got 10 commandments from God, and Jesus confirmed them, reiterated them, and he elaborated on them further also. So similarly, when Krishna comes, Krishna doesn't say I am giving something new. He says that I am giving you what has been given by the sages in the past. I am giving you what was revealed earlier to the sun god. So it is not that when the prophets come they have to give something new. They don't give something new, they renew. They renew, that means they give us they show us in a more attractive, relevant, empowering light what we already knew, but we did not tap. Now again we see that at that time the religious orthodoxy at the time of Jesus, it just got wild at him. The religious orthodoxy at his time, they got wild at him in the sense that they actually complained. And then Pontius Pilate, the Roman magistrate who was there, authority who was there, he actually tested Jesus. It was a mock trial practically, and Jesus was crucified. Jesus was sentenced unfairly and was crucified. So now here we see parallels with what happened to Haridas Thakur. Whenever the path of devotion is talked about, see, what happens is religion is meant to be a path to God, but often there is a religious establishment that comes up, and that establishment grabs power and develops vested interests. And when anyone tries to free the path of religion from those vested interests, from their power, then they become angry, they become vindictive. And it was the Jew establishment at that time which complained to Pontius, the Roman rulers. So we see something similar in the case of Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur was actually teaching the path of devotion, and it was the Hindu Brahmins at that time, they complained to the Muslim king, the Muslim Qazi, the Muslim in charge, and then the Muslim in charge actually, Jesus was crucified and Haridas Thakur was given a similar punishment. The punishment of course was much more, in one sense, it was brutal. Both were actually, the flogging publicly in 22 marketplaces, the idea was not just to punish but to humiliate and ultimately to kill. Practically no one would survive flogging by very powerfully built people over 22 marketplaces. So the idea of flogging in a marketplace is what? That everybody should see publicly the humiliation, the misery, and should recoil in horror from doing anything similar. So, and being beaten, not only does the person get humiliated, physically tormented, but the assault is so brutal that people die also. Similarly, there were various different ways of killing people at that time, execution. So Socrates was given the cup of poison. Now that could have been a way to kill, but because the whole how the trial took place and how the trial was wrong is a matter of much historical research and debate. We will not go into that here of Jesus' trial. But the point is that Jesus was crucified, and crucifixion is a very painful and publicly humiliating way of killing a person. Having nails being sent through the body, it's horrendous. So now here we see that even amid his great bodily pain, what was Jesus' response? Jesus' response was, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." So rather than thinking that, oh, what has happened to me? Oh, I am devoted to God, and why am I suffering like this? So that sort of expressions may have come, but the concluding thoughts, the most celebrated thought that he had at that time was the statement that actually forgive you, for they know not what they do. Now of course in some of the Gospels are the 4 books of the New Testament wherein Jesus' life and activity are talked about. So in one of the Gospels it is talked about how Jesus also said, oh God, why have you forsaken me? Now when he speaks this, some people may say that this is a sign of his being non-spiritual. But that actually, rather than seeing it simplistically like that, what we should focus on is that when there is pain, when there is humiliation, there can be some expression of human emotion, but the ultimate determination to serve continues. So Arjuna also felt grief struck when Abhimanyu was killed, and he actually said to Krishna also, Krishna, why did you tell me what was happening to Abhimanyu? But the test was he continued his service to Krishna. Similarly, the concluding thought was Forgive them, for they know not what they do. And such is the exalted consciousness of Jesus. And now we see significantly that Haridas Thakur also, his floggers were beating him, and Haridas Thakur was chanting the holy names as transcendental to the pain. And finally the floggers said to him, exhausted, "Oh Haridas, if you don't die, we will have to die. Because the king will kill us for not having punished you sufficiently." And then what did, actually it is said that when Haridas Thakur was being flogged, Sudarshan Chakra was ready to leave Lord Vishnu's fingers to kill off the floggers, to chop off the head of the floggers. But Haridas Thakur's prayers for forgiving these floggers were far greater than Lord Vishnu's anger at those who were torturing his devotees. And that's why Lord Vishnu Sudarshan Chakra could not leave. Now Haridas Thakur did not want to trouble them. So he said, "Okay, then watch how I'll die." And he went into Samadhi. So this is the mood of Vaishnava compassion. And perhaps the greatest lesson that we can learn from Jesus' life is what happened afterwards. It is said that after he died and he was crucified, his body was buried, taken down from the cross, and it was put in a grave. But afterwards, when people came, they found that there was nothing in the grave. And after that, they found further that there was a resurrection, that some people saw him, met him, and especially his apostles, they felt his presence, and that convinced them. So they could have very well taken this as a disaster. Oh, he was supposed to be Son of God, he was supposed to be the promised prophet, Messiah, and he couldn't even protect us. He couldn't even protect himself, so how will he protect us? And what is the use of following someone who can't even protect himself? So if they had gone into that zone, then Christianity would have ended within a few years at that time. Jesus' teachings would have got lost. But the spiritual experience of his presence that they got and the inspiration that they took from that transformed Christianity. So what happened is, they got the conviction that Jesus laid down his life for us. And because he laid down his life for us, therefore we should lay down our lives for him. And the apostles, many of them, they just risked their lives going to far and wide countries and places to spread the message of Jesus. And many of them also were tortured, and some of them lost their lives, but still they kept tirelessly sharing Jesus' message. And so they transformed an adversity into an opportunity for prosperity. The adversity was the death of Jesus, but they saw that, oh, he has given up his life for us. Let me take this as an opportunity to give my life for him. So similarly, when we face reversals, when we face obstacles, when we can look at Srila Prabhupada's life and we can see that how many difficulties he had to face. His business got burglarized and collapsed. His BTG distribution did not work. His League of Nations, there was a clique against it, and he had to abandon that project where he had practically invested all his energy at that time. He tried to assist his god brothers, but they did not have a vision for expanding preaching much. He started going to America, but he got a heart attack, not just one but two heart attacks. Was on the verge of death, if a possibly third attack would have come. He started preaching in America, but his typewriter got stolen. Before that he tried to engage his family in devotional service, but they were uncooperative. And further, when he went to America, eventually he got some people interested, but the most interested person turned against him, went mad because of drugs and attacked him. So what Srila Prabhupada went through in his elderly years was nothing short of crucifixion. They may not have been physically, nails may not have been put into it, but the nails of devastating failures, they tormented his heart. But rather than giving up, rather than saying that, you people, I am doing this all for you, you are not interested in this, get lost. Now, he was praying for their deliverance. And Srila Prabhupada was asked that, Swamiji, will you pray for me? A lady asked him. Prabhupada said, I am always praying for you. I am desiring your welfare. Otherwise, why would I have come such a long distance so far away in my old age? So Prabhupada actually exhibited the same compassion. And yes, Prabhupada faced some difficulties. Even during, after he started ISKCON, it was not that everything was wonderful. There were so many difficulties, so many reversals. And now also when we are practicing Krishna consciousness individually or in the association of devotees, there will be difficulties. But we can see those difficulties. I have a few and small difficulties. But Srila Prabhupada had so many and so great difficulties. And still he persevered. He gave up his life. He gave his life. Prabhupada may not have been crucified, but he sacrificed his life in old age, working throughout the day and working practically most of the night to share Krishna's message. During the day he shared Krishna's message with those who were there around him to hear him. And during the night he shared Krishna's message with those who were not there to hear him by writing his books. Yes. So, Prabhupada gave his life for giving Krishna to me. Let me also give my life for at least receiving Krishna from him, if not for sharing Krishna with others. So when we see the sacrifice of the great saints and we take inspiration from that to make small sacrifices according to our capacity, then we can also march ahead in our spiritual life and in sharing the great message of love with others. Now, Christmas is the day when Jesus is said to have been born, and the significance is that Christmas is actually meant to be celebrated as a commemoration of the birth of Jesus. And although some people do center the celebration of Christmas on Jesus' birth, but otherwise it just becomes a occasion for lots of shopping and lots of fun, where Jesus is just one obscure memory somewhere. And there are Christmas sales. Now festivals are to be characterized by festivities. But just as it happens in Diwali also, people don't think much about Lord Ram's return and the lighting of the lamps because of that. They think more of eating the feast that has been cooked and blowing the firecrackers and having fun that way. So often when great souls appear, the forms with which we celebrate their advent or their coming, that the forms get so prominent that the purpose of that celebration gets lost. So it happens often with Jesus. Now, for example, the most prominent characteristic in Christmas, or the most prominent character for people in Christmas, more than Jesus, is Santa Claus. Now, the whole concept of Santa Claus coming and giving gifts may be materially endearing, but it is not spiritually uplifting very much. And the whole idea is getting material gifts. So this is an example of how within a religious tradition itself, something which is meant for spiritually ennobling purpose can be diverted off to a materially titillating purpose. So yes, children may receive gifts and they may feel happy at receiving gifts. That is all fine. But what is more important is not to let Santa Claus usurp Jesus. And it's not that we get material gifts and we forget the spiritual gift that was the giver of which came on this day. So we also, when we celebrate festivals, we also have to be careful that we don't let the form distract us from the essence. And if we focus on inviting the Lord, inviting His grace in our heart, and whatever celebrations we do that with that central purpose in mind, to increase our devotion, increase our dedication, to increase the room that we give in our heart for the Lord. And the more we invite and invoke His presence in our heart, the more we become enlivened, we become enlightened, the more our life becomes peaceful and joyful. And that receiving the gift of love of God, that is the central message of the celebration of Christmas. And that is the central message which in the Vedic tradition also the great saints have given us. Krishna has come to give, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to give, and Srila Prabhupada came to give. Thank you. Hare Krishna.